everybody, and welcome to the Digital to Dice podcast. I am Dave.
I'm Ron.
And Ron, we got episode 259 today. Got anything?
That was my score the last time I played putt-putt was 259.
What's putt-putt?
Miniature golf? In some parts of the country, it's miniature golf. In other parts, it's putt-putt.
Yeah, I've never heard of putt-putt.
It's actually, back in the 80s, there was a putt-putt tour.
Really?
That they just kind of, you could turn it into a half-hour Sunday morning garbage time TV show, and you could get, $2,000 or $3,000 for essentially playing miniature golf.
Interesting. I've actually watched some miniature golf videos on YouTube when people go like these extreme miniature golf places.
Yeah, there's a couple of them that are really,
and it's like
a younger couple that does it.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like some of the holes where the ball goes and goes up in the air and spins over here and jumps over fire and all this other stuff. It's pretty wild to watching them play this.
When I was growing up, I've actually never played putt-putt golf or miniature golf. The one store in the town that my folks live in, my mom lives in now, and to tell you just how small Duxbury, Vermont is. It was a campground. It was the creamy or soft serve, depending on what part of the country you're in. So it sells bait, sells, the country store, and it had a little miniature golf course with it. I don't know if that's still up or running or not, but yes, that was the one thing that Duxbury had. Didn't have a post office, didn't have a hardware store, but it had miniature golf.
There was a miniature golf in the town I grew up in. It was right next to a fried food restaurant. And you could sit in the restaurant or you could just get the takeout. So what you would do is, the parents would drop you off at miniature golf. You play your 18 holes, and then you go over and you go to the window and get something to eat and sit on the picnic table, and then they'd show up in an hour or two to pick you up. That's how the 70s were,
That's cool.
Yeah. And I remember there was this one hole with it was like a barrel. It had this, barrels probably a couple feet wide, and there was a ramp. And if you had to hit it under the barrel, through the ramp, and then into the next area for the hole. And for some reason, they had that barrel lined up that as long as you put it somewhere in the middle, you were guaranteed a hole in one every time. That was kind of neat. And then on the last hole, I don't remember how the last hole was. It wasn't that difficult, but if you got a hole in one in the last hole, you got a free round. And so, of course, every single time, I got a hole in one. Everyone running over, they're getting their free round. The poor kid working is like, did you really get a hole in one? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. The 18th was reconstructed to up the slope 100 feet, right?
It went off somebody's foot, but it still went in the hole. So, we've had some fun with the miniature golf over there.
Yeah, I think that there's only one club allowed in miniature golf, right? And it's not the foot wedge?
Yeah, it's just the putter. That's from all I've ever seen. There was some tough holes. You had to get some bank shots, and you could really screw up there.
It really is. It can be quite the challenge, and was a boon for AstroTurf sales.
Oh yeah, yep.
Because of that. So that's kind of clever to have the snack bar and have your undivided attention and all the smells of the fries and the burgers.
Oh my gosh, yeah. You go, you just it was a cheap day. You go over there, play golf, and you sit at the snack bar there and just have your shake and your fries, whatever it was. And that's just it just spoke 70s. And both are gone now. Both the miniature golf and the fried food place is gone, sadly.
The season up here is so short. I mean, you really don't want. We've had one day of 70, and then it was so windy that you didn't really want to go outside. It's almost warm enough for those of us who are natives to want to eat outside, but not quite, because as I tell my mother, 55 in April is a hell of a lot different from 55 in October.
Oh yeah, yeah, very different.
So we're about a week away, I think, from going, yup, we're going to sit outside and eat. Maybe 55 degrees, but darn it, we've earned it.
Yeah, we had an 80-degree day the other day. It was like, holy cow, it was nuts. In fact, that's the day I went on and saw Al Red Sox fan, listener of the show, supporter of the show, YouTube channel, Al Red Sox fan. I went out and dropped off a couple of gifts for him. I had a couple of things for him, so I drove out. I said, I'm just going to drop them off. So I dropped them off. We had a coffee, and then I left. But it was fun to meet him there. Quick funny story about that miniature golf place.
Okay.
I remember going into the 6th grade, I think it was, or 7th grade. And I was with my mother and my brother, and we went in there. We went into the restaurant part for something, and my 5th and 6th grade teacher.
Oh no!
We're having
you never
lunch
wanted
there.
to run into them. No.
And it was this, it was just funny because there was 3 or 4 different teachers in that school for different grades, and the fact that my 5th grade and my 6th grade teacher were having lunch together just by themselves, and it was kind of funny to see that. Oh, these are teachers I've had the last 2 years, and they were, oh, hi, how's it going? Oh, you're gonna do great. It was so nice. It was unbelievable. They were so nice, and I was just like, oh man, these people here, I'm not sure, but they were so nice. I got to say,
I ran into a teacher at the grocery store with my mother, I ran the other way.
Yeah, these were again the 70s were not nice in school. They weren't afraid to yell at you. Let me just say that. They never hit us. We were past that level at that point. But
did you ever have the unfortunate fortune of having to go into a teacher's lounge in that era?
I walked by them. I don't think I've ever gone into them though.
The one in my elementary school had a vending machine in there, and so. So that was the good news because you could get Oreos or whatever if you were really good. But the bad news is that everybody smoked.
Oh, really? Yeah.
On those walls. They might have been white to start, but they were, Anyway,
let me see here. Let me get ways to get a hold of us, and we'll talk about what we're gonna talk about today.
Okay.
Digitaltodice.com is the website. Digitaltodice.com. 978-751-DICE is the text line. Digitaltodice@yahoo.com is the email. Facebook.com/groups/digitaltodice. Join the discussion over on Facebook. And if you'd like to join us on Patreon and come into our Discord and chat with us, patreon.com/digitaltodice. And again, thanks everybody that supported us throughout the years and continue to support us. And we have, we'll have 3 stars are back this week, so we can't wait to announce our 3 stars at the end of the show. Today, we're going to talk about explaining our passion. And it's something that we've all run into. Okay, because let's face it, we're all basement warriors when we play this stuff here. Now, once in a while, we go out and play with our friends here and there, or go to a convention or whatever. But for the most part, it's you run into people. It's just like, so what have you been doing? And then you try to explain your passion, and it's not as easy as you think. It's really not. So that's going to be our discussion today. Let's see. What do you think? Should we get into what we're playing here?
Yeah.
All right. I think I'll kick it off this week. I think you kicked it off last week. So What have I been playing here? Well, I've been on vacation for a week. I shut everything down for a week after that winter I had, and I started to play some things here and have some fun. So doing
your boys are back in action this weekend, right?
I thought it was this week. But I thought it was last week, but I guess it is this week. Yeah. That team I had, boy, what a finals they had. Final game of the season, final playoff game at home anyway, and they came back from 3-1 down in the third to beat the best team and advance to the Final Four. I think it is down in New Jersey. So good for them.
The Dean Cup, and it will be a double elimination tournament
down in New Jersey. Yeah. And it's funny that you brought that up because that could be a fun thing to do, a double elimination tournament.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of products I could do. I've been doing my Dave's Classic Rewind, just pick a game and play. But it would be kind of fun to play a short kind of double elimination tournament to get some teams on the table and not have to worry about long-term things like that. But speaking of long-term, holy cow, I fired up 1976 Payoff Pitch. It's a new season I picked up a few weeks ago. And I decided I was going to play the Red Sox season. I wanted to see how they responded after the 75 series loss to Cincinnati.
Not well.
So, I'm 4-1 right now.
Well, good for you.
And I've been having some fun with that. We've had couple of walk-offs. I got to say, we've had a couple of walk-offs, or at least one walk-off. We last night we were playing Cleveland. We were up by 2 runs in the 9th. Blew that. Cleveland then got 2 runs in the 10th. They blew that. And of course it's extra innings because it's after midnight, right? And I just wanted to play a quick game. So it's extra innings.
Don't you know by now that the second you say, I've only got 20 minutes.
I can't believe how many extra inning games I play. It's got to be it feels like half. It's not half, but it feels like every other game I play is extra innings. And so we got into the 11th, and Carlton Fisk hit a triple. He's been my man this season, Carlton Fisk. I think he had 2 or 3 home runs in one game, actually. Freddie Lynn went 5 for 5 last night. That was fun. And Rico Petrocelli hit a fly ball in the center field that sent Fisk home for the win in the 11th. But been playing that payoff pitch 1976, mostly Red Sox, but I'm going to probably sprinkle in some other games just because that's a fun season to play. And it's a little before my 77s where I really picked up into baseball. So this is a little bit out of my range, but I'm enjoying what I'm seeing here. So I'm going to play some other games, but it's mostly a Red Sox replay is what I'm doing. I've been playing a lot of APA Basic at night, especially before I went on vacation. That's a fun game that, doesn't take a lot of thought, and you can play that in, 20 minutes, a half hour, and it's just late at night. That's my go-to game. It really is.
I think that's the perfect game you're playing late at night. I know that our friend Tebow, I think, does most of it because he's the master of the master.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what would you call a master of the master? Anyway, he's an early morning player.
Right.
So it's a good way to get the brain cobwebs out of the brain first thing in the morning. But yeah, APA Basic at night.
Yeah. I really like the master version of that game, but I haven't played it in a couple months, so I pulled out the book and the instructions. I went back reading it again. It's like, wow, there's a lot of things you got to remember. None of it hard, but there's a lot of things.
No.
But everything, I do like it. I really do like how the master game does things. It just works for me. But again, it's one of those things where, sometimes at night I just want to play a game, and I love the APA cards, and I just like to get that on my table. So playing some APA Basic Baseball. And also my new 07-08 APA hockey season arrived. And
you showed off that Ovechkin card. My God, that's filthy.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's the most ridiculous card I've ever seen. I think there were 3 numbers that weren't single digits. Everything was 8 and under. And they weren't all 1s and 2s, but there was a lot of 1s and 2s, and again, a lot of 3s, 4s, 5s, and 6s. So those are potential shots on net.
He was 70-71 in APA for hockey, right?
Yes, yeah.
I bet Esposito that year he had 559 shots. That card must all be single digits.
I'll have to take a look at that card too and see what that looks like. But the Ovechkin card, he led the league in points, he led the league in shots. It was like, oh my gosh, that was.
Would you believe that last night, and apparently on an icing call that shouldn't have been called? I'm not going to argue that though. Was Ovechkin's first ever overtime playoff winner?
Yeah.
I looked last night and it was 2-0, and I went, okay, I'm not. I'm hoping that Montreal takes 1 at home. I'd be happy with 5. Didn't know until this morning, until I saw on my Facebook that people were kvetching about what happened, that they came back to tie it to 4. So, maybe Montreal could do more than that. But hard to believe in his 19 years that was his first overtime game winner.
Yep, it is. That's kind of crazy that he did that. What else have I been playing here on the table? A little bit of shootout hockey. Had that on the table a little bit too. I've been enjoying that. And then I went back on the PC to Steam, and I picked up Skyrim.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, Ron sent me birthday wishes, and that was enough to not only, but something, not only that is it covered Skyrim, but I found a wicked coupon deal at this site called, I think it was fanaticals.com. Okay. And my buddy's like, check it out. You can get discount codes for Steam, and it's legit, and it works. And I did. I put it in, and I got it real cheap. And I was like, holy cow, I got Skyrim real cheap. So I've been going back to Skyrim. That's a game first time I played it on the Xbox 360, I put in, I don't know if it was 200 or 300 hours. It was a lot of hours. It really was. And then I picked it up for PS4 and probably played it for another 70 or 80 hours. And then I got it for Xbox One because that's what we had upstairs at the time. Again, this is going back many years ago. And I played, 10 or 20 hours upstairs with the Xbox One. So I bought it 3 times. I just love the game. And every time it would come out for a new console, I'd get it. Well, I picked it up for the PC. I think I got it for under $9 or something like that. Or
That's
under
great.
$10 with that coupon. Yeah, it was stupid, that coupon. And I saved like 78%. I was like, okay, thanks. My buddy told me about it. So I started playing that. Yeah, I'm already 10 to 12 hours into that. I've only had it a day. So I played 3 hours last night, 3 hours the night before, and 3 hours in the morning or something like that. But, oh, yeah, I'm back to that. That's fun.
Are those puzzles dynamic, or is it the same thing? It's that they just get progressively harder and harder as you play?
No, the puzzles are super, super easy. They
Okay.
really are. It's like, you look at a wall and it shows you the three symbols, and you just got to turn the dial to the three symbols. So this is not like a Tomb Raider where you're really thinking about the puzzles. The idea is just to play the adventure game. So you can't just walk up to the door and try to open it without arrows shooting at you. But I mean, all you got to do is look around and you'll find a solution. It's pretty simple with that.
Mm-hmm.
So enjoying the heck out of Skyrim, and of course, out of the blue, after I decided I wanted to play Skyrim and get back into it, Bethesda announces a remastered version of Oblivion. And what Oblivion is, it's the one that was before Skyrim.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's all part of the Elder Scrolls lore and the whole bit. And I had played Oblivion in 2006, I think it was. Never finished it. Probably got 20 or 30 hours into it, maybe less. It's just one game I never finished. I had some fun with it, but it's never finished it. Skyrim I just thought was so much better when that come out 5 years later in 2011. So we're talking old games here. We really are.
Bethesda was the design house for Wayne Gretzky hockey. That was a
Oh, was it really?
Was it a game? Yeah.
Oh, nice.
It's interesting that you say that, because I think in the last few years there's been a revitalization, first of all, the emulators, so you could go back through and play your Nintendo or Super Nintendo and all that, and a whole bunch of new, we're not talking about sports games here, but retro style releases, that 8-bit, that 16-bit, those puzzles, all sorts of newer games to take advantage of all the technology that's come out in the last 40 years. And so I'm not surprised that these games are being reworked and remastered for new operating systems and take advantage of things, just because it is a comfort food. It is that. I mean, you had talked about, I think, the last few months about Skyrim as far as wanting to play that again and such. And I think that yeah, we tend to go back to play things that bring us joy, and we can kind of forgive, younger people may not like the graphics of said thing. You poke your eyes out, you're playing Tomb Raider with some of those graphics, wink wink, nudge nudge, but yeah, I think there is that nostalgia factor that we've talked about in the past is coming back in for things that are 21st century.
Well, I just think it's neat that they took a game that was pretty successful and they modernized it. That they overhauled the graphics, they overhauled the gameplay. There's a lot of things about the gameplay I didn't like, and that's why I never finished the game. It was clunky, and then Skyrim, they polished it all out. So what people are hoping is that they took the engine of Skyrim and the mechanics of Skyrim and then just put this game into it. So, picture an older version of Madden, your favorite version of Madden, upgraded, to today's standards. So yeah, I just thought it was funny that, as I bought Skyrim and started playing it, a couple of days later, Oblivion comes out. It's like, oh, now what do I do?
There you go back. That's it. NHL '94. They've redone a couple times.
Yeah, they put it in the
modern teams.
I forget which NHL it was. I don't know if it was 14 or 15 or something, but they put it in there. You could play NHL '94 right in the new game. So,
which is crazy, but yeah, I mean that's the age that we all are. So,
yep. So that's kind of what I've been playing. A lot of tabletop stuff, but a little bit of PC gaming as well, going back to my adventure days. I still haven't picked up Digital Diamond 13. I'm still using 12 right now, and I saw that Mark was releasing hot fixes and bug patches. So we'll get him on the show eventually to talk about that, but we're going to let him get that new version squared away and get those updates taken care of before we have him on the show.
Is he coming to Connecticut or no?
No, I don't think Mark's coming to Connecticut. Speaking of Connecticut, I just added 3 or 4 new special guests that have confirmed they're coming. We did have one that can't come now. It's too bad that he couldn't come. But we added 3 more, so we got a pretty full slate of developers or people who are bringing things to show off to this event.
Nice.
That should be pretty fun with that. Oh, I will say before I turn it over to you for what you're playing.
Yeah.
That Red Sox game I played last night against Cleveland. Sox were up by 2 in the top of the 9th, and the first 3 batters got on base with errors. 3 errors in a row. It was Burleson at short, a rare play error on the pitcher who collided with the runner, and they gave him an error, and then it was hit down to Denny Doyle at second base. He made it. 3 errors in a row, loaded the bases, and that's how they tied it in the 9th. So we all got a pretty good chuckle last night when I was playing that online.
I still haven't forgiven you for coming back with a Bob Stanley start. Although Appa is his engine, I think that I think Appa, I think he would do reasonably well in a Red Sox replay with Appa, as opposed to anything that goes more with individual pitching. Anyway, my replay is almost at the end of June. We've been motoring right along here. I don't think we'll be doing playoffs in November like we did last year.
Why do you think it's going faster?
No construction in the building.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, if you're drilling above you, you really can't be streaming about that. But yeah, and so we're trying to be consistent 3 days a week and all that. And the Brooklyn Dodgers have caught fire, and they've surpassed the Milwaukee Braves, who are going to play 850 baseball forever. And the Dodgers are in first. The big surprise, and I think every year that we do one of these, there is something that kind of catches me off guard, especially in these older seasons, is that the Yankees had crawled above 500. Okay, so here they come, and they won in real life in 56. They won the American League, and they won the World Series. And Mickey Mantle had a Triple Crown year, So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I took it, because it is vintage Yankee baseball. They've slid below 500 again. In fact, I streamed them yesterday against Chicago. It's the first time I've had the White Sox on the channel. The White Sox are in second or third place. The Yankees go up 3-0 and blah, 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 and then gave up 10 straight runs. It is, I don't know what it is. The Yankees are like 4 or 5 games under 500. We're now in the mid 60s on the game count. This isn't just, okay, you had a couple bad weeks. I mean, I just plotted ahead for a schedule to take me past the All-Star break, which is in like 3 weeks. It's like they're in trouble, which the Red Sox fan in me is delighted about, but it's like, no. So, you don't know when you run into the situation, whether the game mechanics, is it not because it's a computer game, is it not handling it the way that they should be handled? I know that last year we had that trouble with the Oakland A's in 88. Or is it just one of those luck of the draw? You could run a replay 100 times and the Yankees would win 98, and here's the 99th or 100th time, and they're not doing it. So that's been fun.
I think the PC games, if we talked about, are always going to be a little bit more suspect than rolling your own dice.
I think that, the one thing that a PC game can't do that we can do on the table with cards and dice is context. It, and for a computer, and it's not a slam for Dave Cook or Richard Hanna or any of those, it looks at a line of data, and it doesn't know the difference between a Mickey Mantle, a Jack Nicklaus, a John Daly, or a Bob Zupsik, okay? It just looks at what it's given, rolls the result, and moves on. And I'm very curious in the future, and this might be a show topic too, of just how AI will change how PCs manage against you. As at some point, it's going to be able to understand context, such as, do I pitch around Mickey Mantle? Do I pull this pitcher now because I'm down in a playoff series? It's 3rd and 1. I'm down 2 touchdowns, but it's a playoff game. It's not a week 6 special against Minnesota or Tampa Bay. Those decisions that you and I and all of you out there know you have to make because of the circumstances, that the computer just goes, yeah, nope, we're doing this.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
There's no emotion with a computer. You know what I mean?
Right. And that's precisely what the opposite of what happens when you play. It's full of emotion. So last week, because it's been a couple of weeks, I did a Brooklyn and Milwaukee. Doesn't really matter who they played, Milwaukee or Cincinnati. And I had a walk-off walk. Bases loaded walk to Sandy Amoros, pinch hitter for Brooklyn. You don't see that very often.
Right.
A walk-off, bases loaded walk to win the game 4-3. That was great. So doing that, I got to say, this is not a sports sim per se, but PGA Tour 25 has been worth the price of admission and all the more. I've been playing with the computer settings. at first the AI was too good, and 40 under was winning tournaments. And I'm trying to make myself as reasonable of a professional golfer as possible. But I'm not shooting 40 under over 4 rounds. And so I think the couple tournaments, the winning score was 40 under par.
Ooh, yeah.
So I adjusted it, and we went to Sawgrass for the players. And I won by like 12 shots. I was the only golfer to finish under par. I think I was 8 or 9 under for the 4 rounds, which I was quite happy with that score. It was quite reasonable, but I had turned the computer down too much. So I had to buff up the computer. And so the first week I'm playing at Innisbrook. I forget the Valspar, I think is the current name of it. And since it's officially licensed PGA, you get all the markings, and the tee markers, Dave, are gallons of paint cans. We haven't sold our souls out or anything like that. No, don't. I mean, it's like I live in an apartment. We're not painting anything. And so I have it right. And so it is a course that is difficult to begin with. And the wind is a crosswind for some of these holes. And I got to tell you, as good as my golfer is, I played the third round this morning. I play all 18 holes. I shot a 73 on a par 71. I mean, I'm not cranking through and, it's not links. When you played links as a kid or whenever you had that and I only shot a 55 today. It's not this at all. And I'm up to the next to the top level of play, so it's not like I'm sitting there playing easy pass golf here.
I think that's why when you come over from those games and then you try to play Action PC golf or ASG golf and you're not, shooting 35 under, that you do get very, very frustrated really fast because it is more like accurate
golf. It's not what you're used to, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's the problem I had is I went over to Action PC and ASG and I was like, man, what's going on here? And then, you go back to Tiger Woods golf and I'm 25 under par and killing the field. It's like, yeah.
I'm just telling you, though, I think they've done a very good job. I mean, it's not a sim. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. At 53 years old, with all of my issues, I'm not going to go shoot 67 at Sawgrass. Maybe on the 17th hole, I'd shoot a 67. Yeah. But so there is enough of a challenge there. I birdied the last couple holes or whatever to get back to shoot a 73, but it felt like an accomplishment, which I think for any of those console games is what you're looking for. I mean, so having a fun time with that. What else am I doing it's about all the sports sims I've played. But yeah, the PGA Tour, it will go on sale at some point. For console golf, it is a gorgeous game. So
yeah, they look really nice. They look really cool. All right, so let's continue on and let's talk about our topic of the day, which is explaining our passion.
Couple times over the last few weeks, I've run into people that I haven't seen or talked to in multiple years. And as you do, oh, Ron, how are you? What do you do? You go, because this is the day job for me, not the whole singing cabaret bit, which I've been told by my YouTube listeners to stop. But sitting there trying to figure out how to explain to somebody that I'm replaying an older season in a game that no one has ever heard of is kind of a challenge to do. We've talked about this on the show before. Our spouses just kind of pat us on the head and say, "That's nice, dear," and that outside of our circle of people who those of you who listen to the show, what we do. But no one else really knows what we do. And Dave and I were talking about it, I think, when you were in Connecticut or whatever, and you said, if I said that, I could say that I played Dungeons and Dragons, and then you went through and said, if I killed a couple orcs within 20 rolls, they're going to go, what? And I went, wait a minute. But if you say you played Dungeons and Dragons, people are going to understand what you're talking about. They may not have played any of those role-playing games.
They've heard of it and they have an idea what it is.
They've heard of it. Our friend Ray, who does the Around the Layout podcast, he's a model railroader. If you say, I build model railroads, people are going to understand what it is. They might not understand the differences in the engine sizes and how many screws there should be and what you're doing to build railroad ties or anything like that. But you're going to say, this is what I do. This is my hobby. People are going to understand that. And I think one of the things that really hasn't come up is, how do you explain what it is that we do?
Yeah, because I think everybody's seen a model railroad set somewhere, somehow, some way. They've heard of it. You talked before about crocheting. Everybody knows what that is.
Right.
A lot of hobbies that people have that, are not maybe mainstream hobbies, but, at least you've heard of them. And Dungeons and Dragons being one of them, the whole, but video games. So I play video.
Yeah, absolutely.
I play. Everyone's heard of Madden and NBA 2K and all this other stuff. But yeah, when you say I play tabletop sports games, a lot of times when you say I play sports, people think it's like a betting thing or a fantasy.
It could be that.
thing.
It could be fantasy, or it could be a Madden. I mean, there are professional Madden. There are. Let me put it this way: 6-figure professional Madden tournaments.
Yep.
I mean, you get lost into that world of that, and so, which is, we're not joystick jockeys. So years ago, when I got to Sporting News as a kid, there'd be ads for Micro League Baseball in there, and I read them wrong. It's like, no joystick required, or something like, something about a joystick in the ad, and I went, it's too bad you need a joystick for this to play, because I would have asked for it for Christmas. Well, by the grace of divine intervention, a softball friend of my dad's pretty much bought it for me. And that's how I got into sports sims. What was that, and found the whole world. But again, you wouldn't necessarily, being 13, 14, 15 years old, what's the boy enjoy there, Mrs. McKee? Oh, he's playing baseball on the computer. Oh, okay. When's he getting a girlfriend? The 12th of never. Oh, poor boy. That sort of thing. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things that, you do these things. I don't think we've explained that really well.
I know that I've tried to show what I do to some people. And I sat down with one relative and we played a game of Strat Hockey Basic. And he played to his credit, he played the whole game with me. Mm-hmm. I forget what season we played, but I think I gave him the Bruins so he could play with, the guys he knew as a kid. And he played it, and we get done, and he just kind of, okay, we were done, and that was it. He didn't say, hey, that was fun, or hey, it stunk. That was it, So it's like, okay, well, I didn't know what kind of reaction I would get, but he just said, okay, that was it. Game was over. We just turned around and went back and sat on the couch, So, and then there was another friend of mine that I brought over shootout hockey, and he was laid up, and I showed him, and he had a lot of fun with that. But I think, that was just, a week or two while he was healing up with his broken leg or whatever it was. And then I don't think he ever went back to it again, but he played it for a couple of weeks or so and had some fun with it. So, two different reactions. One was not interested at all. One had some fun with it, but it was just, this is something I'll do short term, but at some point I want to go and get back to whatever else I'm doing. So it's a really weird hobby to explain to people, hey, I played, a baseball game last night from 1976. How do you explain that? I rolled dice and looked at a card, and people look at you like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So what I usually say is, because I have relatives that watch my YouTube channel, and they're like, I don't know what you really do. And I was like, well, I play Dungeons and Dragons, but with sports.
Right.
And that's the best way I've come to figure out how to describe what I do. Because I says, picture sitting there, and you got your characters, which are your players, and then you got your dice, and then you have your charts, and you roll or you flip or whatever it is, and you see what happens on the play. And by the time you're done, you've played a full game, and I don't know how they do it, but it feels like that you were just at that game. But it's hard to describe. It really, really is hard to describe.
It really is a niche of a niche hobby, because I suppose, when we were kids, you were more apt to play your current heroes. So when the 80s, you would have gotten, if you were playing these games, you'd have bought the Strat or the Appa set that had the Rick Middletons and the Terry O'Reillys and tried to beat the Patrick Waugh and the Mike Vernons of the day. And so that would have been a little more understandable. Well, he's playing something that you would have, that maybe a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle would have seen on television. Here you go. So you just watch the Super Bowl, for instance. And so, maybe, the Patriots got to the Super Bowl and here's a way for me to try to beat those Bears. And it would have been fresh in their minds of what had happened and whatnot. Today, because although the big game companies do create current product, you really can't go to a younger person and say, well, what are you doing, Uncle Dave? Well, I'm just not, I'm replaying the 1972 Stanley Cup final. Okay, that kid wasn't alive in 1972.
Yeah.
It doesn't know Phil Esposito and Rogie Vachon from a hero or whatever it is. And so that's nice. The cheese is falling out the cracker again, or whatever. And so, but I'm not. I like how you said that with it's Dungeons and Dragons for sports.
That's as close as I can come to try and describe it. And the other thing is, like, I never heard of it. These games when I was a kid, and I'll tell that story at Play in Colorado in a couple of months how that all worked out. But I always still wonder, like, pre-internet, how, because they didn't have the money to advertise on TV, maybe an ad in a magazine, but how did these games, Appa Strat, Status Pro, and anything that was back in the day, how did they ever get any traction at all? Because again, I never heard of these, like, ever. Seriously, I never ever heard of them.
Things I ever saw them advertise in were the preseason yearbooks, so Street and Smith, and they were only $1. I remember blowing my allowance in 1979. I had to borrow a quarter or get a loan for my future allowance to buy the 1979 Street and Smith football yearbook. Okay, so they were relatively cheap. It'd be like $4 or $5 a day. And as a kid, my uncle gave me the Sporting News every year. So you'd get it every week, and so they would advertise along with the baseball cards in the back of the magazine. And so you'd sit there and drool over, oh wow, it's a set of 83s for $12. Baby, if I save my money, but I'm looking at the cards, not necessarily the game.
Right.
So you were familiar with all those. I think a lot of it was just word of mouth. I don't know why I didn't get a hold of these games as a kid, because my best friend from that era was a sports junkie like I was. He was a Laker fan. I was a Celtic fan. We played, I think I've told the story about playing the basket game, the one with the ping pong ball and the plastic hoops.
Oh, yeah.
And I would cut the bejesus out of my chin trying to get that thing back and forth. So if someone had introduced us to, let's say, Strat basketball, I mean, we came up with games with baseball cards.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep, we did too.
So if someone had introduced that, that's how you do it. And once you do it once, whether it was Strat or Appa or Status Pro or whatever, you've hooked that person for life, because the immediate thing in that generation was you are playing with today's stars today. It may not be Jim Rice 84. It might have been Jim Rice 83 or Ryan Sandberg 83 or for whatever it was from the year before. But you could literally turn on your television set in New England, watch a Red Sox game or a Braves game or a Cubs game, and voila, you got Dale Murphy on your table.
Yeah.
And the Dale Murphy on your table matched, to a degree, what Dale Murphy was doing on your TV set.
But I never heard of these games, and I didn't have anybody that played them. That's why you hear a lot of people saying, oh, me and my brother played them, or me and my uncle, or me and my friend played them, because it was a very much a word-of-mouth game, it feels like, back then. I mean, I could be wrong, but I mean, how do you, without internet and TV, how do you market these things? So again, it's all, it's through the mail. You bought this through the mail, and, I still have a couple of old boxes of Strat, I think, and have the old the little form that you can fill out to go and get the next season or whatever it is.
Oh yeah, I was on their mailing list forever, and I made the mistake once of calling down there in the early '90s and talked to some gruff person and this, that, and the other thing. So you go through it. I saw Strat once in high school, and it was people that I really didn't know all that well, but I knew what it was that they were playing, and I was certainly intrigued. But I think there was, at least for me, a social stigma of playing a game by yourself. Now, that obviously has gone by the wayside and all that over the years, but you certainly didn't pull out a game and play it by yourself in high school, or at least it was
definitely you versus somebody. Yeah,
right. And I had sisters, and they would sort the baseball cards if you gave them the gum.
Yeah.
Okay, so they wanted the sugar. They'd sit there and put the Cardinals in the Cardinal pile and all that, but you had to give them something to do that with. They were certainly not going to sit there and play Red Sox Twins 87 with you, even if you had the set. So I think computers change that to a degree, and again, just as you get older and have time to do that, you start realizing that can be quite a bit of fun.
When do you think, before I forget this?
Yep.
Okay, so we're talking about the big. The older three, Strat, APA, and Status Pro. Those are the ones that I always hear. Those are the oldest ones. That's just what I hear. Okay, I don't know for sure, but that's what I hear.
Mm-hmm.
Who was it? Bernie in our group that counted over 100 baseball games nowadays.
Yeah, Bernie.
Right?
I think it was 96. Yeah.
Okay. When do you think that all started? Because it really was just the three. Now you had the spinner games as well, so that was something you could I guess you could throw in there as well. But when do you think this explosion of games started, and why? And that got us up to 96 games.
I think it's happened in in the internet age, in the broadband internet age, because the data became available, and you could do that. I mean, if you look at the big two, the older two, there are flaws with these games. There's no such thing as a perfect game. They're very playable. I'm not saying it, but there was something that you would, for APA, it's pitching. How do you make the pitchers feel more realistic? In Strat, it's the basics of the 50-50 system, as far as, do you get your result off the pitcher card? Do you get your result off the batter card? I think I can make a better mousetrap. Here we go with this. Here we go with that. But you needed to be able to have access to data and be good enough at math to figure out how you make it work. Because it wasn't just put the baseball card on top of that and roll for anything. With spreadsheets and such, you could make, I don't want to say with ease, because that's not the case at all, but if you had an idea for a design in your head, you could test it. And you could go through as the quick play games, the final score games, as easy or as complex as you wanted, and be able to get the data for free that you would never have had access to before.
I kind of think back to J.T. Hetrick in the Spiders book, and when we had him on the show, and all the hoops he had to go through to get the data for the Spiders games in 1899.
Right. And so, with things like Retro Sheet, which started in the mid-'80s. I remember my mom one year for my birthday or Christmas got me this book, the 600-page or 700-page book that listed 20 players per team. And it was the first real look for me at sabermetrics. What were they? And we're not talking the super extensive WOBAs and all that, but what was your batting average with runners in scoring position? That sort of thing that you'd look at and go, it's a deeper game here. And baseball's always been the easiest. And it was the first, I think it was the culmination of 84, 5, or it doesn't matter, 3 mid-'80s seasons that they were drawing data from, that they had the play-by-play data from every game from those 3 seasons, and they were here to say, look, here is why player X is more valuable than player Y, because he does a better job moving runners along in a full count than when the bases are with runners on, than when the bases are, however you want to break it down. And I think it took, Clay Dresslock would be the one to ask about that, because he's created a whole bunch of games, not only the baseball mogul, but season ticket baseball. But I believe he was either worked on Hardball or Tony La Russa. So what was available out there to people who were more curious about these things starting about 40 years ago came into the forefront and go, yeah, you can do this. There is a difference between a ground out to third and a ground out to second, which you'd know if you'd watched, but necessarily in a game form. And I think eventually it's come with other sports. I remember in the early 90s buying the sports, the Neft Cohen Sports Encyclopedia Pro Football, which went back to 1960. So it had the entire AFL, then NFL, and then we went to 92 or 93. So one of those poor Buffalo losses. And the stats were consistent there. And so you'd sit there and go, again, this is why I didn't have a girlfriend until I was 25. But you could sit there and go, you know what? Wow. Quarterbacks didn't complete more than half their passes. Or whatever it was. Or, wow, I remember this team and they did a lot better on third down conversions than I ever remember them doing. Because, let's face it, we remember the great things and we remember the bad things. The humdrum is not something that we remember. So I think that's the case, that once this data started to make it into, I don't want to say mainstream, but once it became available in an affordable form, I think that was the explosion of how to turn that into something. I think today, and it's something that I think Strat has done to a degree, but all the companies could do a much better job, is there's a willing audience out there for people to play their fantasy teams. If you sat there and won your championship last year because you had Mahomes as a quarterback and Henry as a running back, and pick your players here, that to me, outside of being a hardcore fan and wanting to relive whatever the championship experience is a selling point of these games. You can make a strat team. You can make an APA team out of those players that won you a title. We just call them draft leagues when I was a kid and in college. But you could do that. And so let's say you had been playing daily or fantasy for 4 or 5 years, and this was the year that you finally won because you were able to snag Jalen Hurts in the draft, or Lamar Jackson in the draft that you couldn't get before because someone else had quit.
Wasn't he with the Globetrotters?
No.
No, okay.
No. You can do that now, and you can do that very easily with both Strat and APA. And anything that is a card-based design as opposed to a team sheet, you can pick and pull and play with those and get that experience. Playing these games, to me, is very much like writing a book. You are telling the thing is, though, that, for those of us who create content, it gets shared and such, but you're very much writing your own story. And I think whether we do it through numbers or the experience of, I can't believe the penalty got called, or the 3 errors in a row that you talked about when you were talking about, what you were playing, something in that story caught your eye to some degree. And I think that's why we play these things. It's not only to go back and, you're a big Rush fan. Did you see someone posted a concert writer for Rush from 1990?
Oh, really?
And no onions in the food.
Really?
Was it was one of the things that, along with exotic foreign beers and waters and stuff like that, there was a couple meals and there was to be no onions. Anyway, but you could go back and listen to the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Rush, name your group, what have you. But it's not telling you anything you haven't heard 100 times.
Right.
You can go back and do the Summit series, which is how you got started in any one of those games. And it tells you a story. And it's a different story every time. It's not Canada pulling their tushies out of the fire the last night in Moscow to win the bloody thing. It is they could have won the whole thing in Canada. They could have lost the thing so easily at any point. But you're telling yourself, although you're using the same players and sometimes you're using the same engine to do it, it tells you a different story every time. And I think that's the draw of these things.
The key is, how do you explain that, though?
But okay, and so to go through and say, look, I mean, my wife is a voracious reader. She'll buy a series of books, 7, 8, 9 volumes into The Vampire Sleeps at Midnight or whatever it is. But, if you were to say that, it's like she gets invested in the main character. And now she has enough of these adventures from these core set of characters that she wants to go back and take it all in. It's the same thing with any TV series. Why do you like a said series? Because you get invested into whatever it is. In the case of Cheers, like 267 episodes of Cheers. Now, the last season wasn't the same as the first season. Not everyone was there, but you knew that at Thursday night at 9:00 you would be entertained, and you felt a vested interest in Sam Malone being an idiot, or Coach or Woody or whatever it was being an idiot, or what would Norm say? It's the same sort of thing, except for the adventure doesn't need to end.
Yeah. Yep. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
I would say that, because years ago when we started this show, we talked about the choose your own adventure books.
Mm-hmm.
Does Bob go down the well, or does Bob go to the bar and drink while his friend dies down the well? Choose wisely. And so that's the thing. You are telling I spend time telling myself a story, but the story doesn't have vampires or orcs or spaceships or bikini-clad Morganas. It is on a ice rink in Quebec City, or a frozen football field in Green Bay, or a basketball court in Inglewood, California. And again, you're just you're moving all the pieces around. You are telling a story to yourself in your head. And the receipt that you have are the numbers that you generate. You look at it later. You got to hang it. You got your no-hitter hanging up on the wall behind you there.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I don't have any Dungeons and Dragons things hanging up behind me.
No, and so so essentially that's how I would explain it is, I'm writing a story. No one else needs to read it. I don't need to make sure that everything is spelt and is there enough tension or whatever. I'm telling myself a story, and I did such a good job with it, or it told me a good enough story, I want to do it again. I want to see that next chapter. I want to see if the idiot gets eaten on Game of Thrones.
And I think that's why, because we have a hard time explaining it, because we're kind of our basement people here by ourselves, that we have these conventions and we have these meetups that we go and we get to play and talk with other people. And like I did a video the other night, and Steve Tower come in, and we were talking about the convention, and people talking about just chatting and playing and tournaments, and Steve said it right off. He goes, it's 90% just conversation, because we don't get to have these conversations face to face very often at all, just a handful of times a year if we're lucky. So when we get to these things, it's here's someone who plays Appa baseball or Appa hockey. I can't wait to talk to you about it, because we have common ground, and it's something we're super passionate about, and we really want to play. How are you playing payoff pitch? What's your thing with that? Have you tried, solitaire pro football, or what play games do you play, and why? And so we get to have these face-to-face conversations, at the conventions and the meetup, and to a lesser degree YouTube. It's not face-to-face, but on the YouTube channels, we get to stream some games and talk to people or have our chats or whatever it is, and that kind of keeps the community kind of a little bit together as well. But And at those places, we don't have to explain our passions because everyone's there for the same reason.
Everyone's there,
Yep.
and even if it's not, I mean, you're not a huge baseball fan. Other people are, hockey, I think, is still the hardest one to break through. I know that we're going to be doing a basketball show sooner or later. Basketball is not a sport that's played an awful lot on the table, but everyone has something in common. Again, it is telling yourself a story and that drama that we all need. It's been years since I've watched any scripted drama. It's not that it's fake, and it's not that it's well done, and it's not this, that, or the other thing. But when you compare something that's come off to someone has written, and you look at something like The Masters a couple weeks ago, tell me what drama that could be scripted could have matched what Rory McIlroy put us through for 5.5 hours on that Sunday afternoon. Sit there and hit these the quality of the shots that he hit and the difficulty of the shots that he hit that were successful. I think some mathematician put that run of shots was a 1 in 28,000.
Yeah, that's three errors in the ninth.
And the 3 years in the 10th or walk. And so to that drama of, for me, the unscripted drama of what the hell is going on here? Oh my goodness, I can't believe this is going on.
Do you kind of think this is almost like trying to get someone to try a new food? Because it is such a weird thing, and it's like you wouldn't believe the fun you have with this and rolling the dice and looking here, and people are like, yeah, that's okay, whatever. But it's almost like you tried this new restaurant, this new food, like, oh man, I just tried blah 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 blah, and it was the most amazing thing I've ever had. You're gonna have a hard time getting people to try it because it's just so far out of the daily thing.
Pho is a good example. I've never had it. It's a Vietnamese food. Pho, P-H-O. Hello there, PJ. How are you? And because food costs money, I'm hesitant to pay the price for a dinner dish for something I may or may not like. And I love it. That's how my wife got me to do calamari. She just shoved a piece in my mouth. Oh, yeah, this is pretty good. But I also think, again, because it is a niche of a niche. Again, I sent the link to my YouTube channel to two people who are moderate sports fans at best, and it would never occur to them to play these things. And I wasn't trying to get them to.
It's actually not called pho; it's called pho.
Is it really?
My uncle told me that. I just looked it up. Yeah, my uncle says I was over there and I tried this dish, and it's called PHO. How would you say it? I said pho. He's like, yeah, that's what I thought too, but it's called actually pho. F is in fan, and the O is pronounced like in butter. So pho. No joke. Huh. No joke. It's called pho.
Okay.
And I remember him saying that too, because I said the same thing. I'm going to call it pho. He's like, no, pho. It makes no sense. No sense. But yes, that's.
And it's pronounced hero, not gyro.
Really?
Did you know that?
The G-I-R-O?
G-Y-R-O.
That's pronounced hero, huh?
Yes.
Wow. No, never knew that one.
Okay. So
we learned so much on this channel. It's unbelievable.
So anyway, I sent the link to the channel to two different people, and I don't expect them to understand what it is that you do, but you're kind of in that, and you can see people having fun. But yeah, that sort of thing. I mean, you introduced to Shootout, which was a good, I think, introduction game to that person, and you gave it a go. And the entry level for that isn't very high in that, and they may pick it up again. I mean, when you're younger today, and there's all the distractions of real world stuff, you might have a family, you might have a partner, trying to find time to learn and then enjoy what it is, because it really is when you look at a card, whether it's a play card or an APA card or a strat card. It's 3 different languages. Yeah. You have all numbers on an APA card. The play cards are all characteristics, and the strat cards look like algebra. It's all math based. Trying to figure out how in the world does this equate to that. I don't have time for this right now. Let's, move on.
I'm kind of wondering if, especially with the tabletop stuff, if you just got to be ready for it. Because a lot of people say, I come home, I'm on the computer all day, and I just want to get off the computer. Some people do that. For me, I find the tabletop stuff way more relaxing. Although you do have to know how to play the game, the computer helps you with the game and takes away all the heavy lifting usually. But there is some enjoyment in playing the tabletop stuff that you don't get anywhere else. But again, I was the video game guy for 40 years. 40 years I did video games. And it was only when I couldn't do it anymore that I come over and found this. And I found this. The big thing about this, it's relaxing. I mean, yeah, you get aggravated when you go into extra innings at 12:30 at night. Like, man, I just want to get this game over with.
Right.
But that's the only aggravation I really get. Video games when you're shooting the zombies or the Call of Duty, you get so angry and you're throwing the controller around. I mean, it's part of the fun, so to speak. But it's still, when I look here, this is just so relaxing. I can take my time. I don't have to roll the dice or flip a card. I can take my time at it. I can go off and come back whenever I want. It is just, and I'm usually playing by myself, so I don't have to worry about making somebody else wait for me or whatever. So for me, it is some of the most relaxing things I've ever done.
It's the book thing. You go at your own pace. You do what you want to learn more about, or whatever it is in enjoyment. You can go and do the big, War and Peace, fantasy, sci-fi, triple book thing, or you pull out the Reader's Digest and read Life in these United States.
Yep.
It's the same thing,
Yeah.
and it can vary in what experience that you want. And sometimes you're looking for the comfort food, and sometimes you're just looking to just take me to a completely different world.
Yep. So the question is, how do you explain your passion to someone that is not playing this? What do you describe it as? How do you say it? Do you not? Do you just kind of go about it and keep it to yourself, and it's your enjoyment, downstairs or whatever it is you play? Just interested to see what everybody thinks about that. One thing before we get to the Stars of the Week, Ron, I did catch. I was on Steam the other day when I was looking around for the Skyrim and all that other stuff. Franchise Hockey Manager 11, I think they're on now, just released an update. And this update puts the International Hockey League as playable historical leagues.
Was that Worcester, or are we talking national teams?
No, this is the IHL. This is the Detroit Vipers.
Oh, when
Gordie Howe played on the Vipers. Yeah, this is the Kansas City Blades, I want to say it was. So the IHL, they actually were rivaling the NHL to a certain degree back in the 90s there. And they had all these teams, the San Francisco Spiders. I think I got a Spiders hat somewhere. And so they had all these teams in the International Hockey League, is called the IHL. And that was almost like a feeder league like the AHL was, but a little bit more independent. And so they just added that, so I can't wait to check that out there. I forget a lot of the teams back in the day. I think you had the Indianapolis Ice and I think the Fort Wayne Comets were in that league for a while, the K-Wings and things like that. So, so the whole bunch of teams, mostly Midwest teams, were in that.
Open a couple Zimas and you'll have a good time.
Yeah, they were. So, so if you're an IHL fan, Franchise Hockey Manager just added that. I don't know any other place you could play that. Really, I don't know any other place you can go and play IHL. I don't even know if Downey Games has any IHL. I don't think so. I think
Harv might have made a season for Paradise before he passed, but that would be about it.
Yeah, he had some AHL, so he might have had some IHL, because that's when I was watching it, like mid-90s. That's when the IHL came up. So I just thought I'd throw that out there for you guys. All righty, so now let's head over to our Stars of the Week. So in episode 259, Jacket, in no particular order, our 3 stars. Our number 3 star is Sonny Ricks.
Woohoo!
Sonny, thank you so much for being a supporter of the show. Number 2 star, someone who has a pretty good YouTube channel, and I like to check out things on his channel, Phoenix Knight.
Yeah.
So check out Phoenix Knight on YouTube. He's got some good stuff going on there. He's doing a lot of sports now. He didn't do sports for a while. Now he's doing a lot of sports. And our number 1 star here in episode 259, Edward Ewing.
Woohoo!
Edward, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For being a Patreon, and a star of the week here on the Digital to Dice podcast. Shall we wrap this up?
Absolutely.
You've been listening to the Digital to Dice podcast. Episode 259 was called Explaining Our Passion. How do we tell people what we do here on the tabletop or on the computer? Ways to get a hold of us, digitaltodice.com is the website. 978-751-DICE is the text line. digitaltodice@yahoo.com is the email. And over on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/digitaltodice. And don't forget, Digital to Dice Con 25 in Connecticut coming up next month. May 17 and 18 is when the convention hall is open, but we'll have some gatherings on Friday, May 16th as well. Just added a whole bunch of new guests. digitaltodicecon.com is the website, or there's a link on digitaltodice.com at the top of the page to get to that. Ron, any final words?
No.
All right. Yeah, you're not the best podcaster, color commentary podcaster for nothing.
All righty then.
All right. I'm Dave. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Until next time.
Bye-bye.